Hello everyone, it's been a while. Really sorry about that. I've been taking a little break from making videos and instead I spent my time really wisely. I watched all 11 series of The Walking Dead. Now, which in hindsight I think was probably not the best decision I've ever made. I should have stopped at season 4, but you live and learn. Anyway, welcome back to Homemade Horror Reviews, and remember one thing, this is just my opinion and it doesn't really mean much at all. So let's cue the intro slide. Anyway, that's enough of that. Let's get to it. So today we're going to talk about Send Help. No, seriously, that's the title. And honestly, a new Sam Raimi film is always worth watching. It's always worth getting excited about. Now, I absolutely love Raimi's work. I think the Evil Dead movies are some of my favourite movies ever made. And whether he's making horror, superhero movies, or something completely odd and bizarre, I think he always brings something kind of unique and interesting to the table. So when I heard he's going to return with another horror movie, obviously I'm excited about this. And frankly, being excited about something is always quite dangerous, especially in the world we live in at the moment, because we're consistently disappointed. So let's get to it. Back in 2019, Columbia Pictures announced that Sam Raimi would direct an untitled horror project. And the screenplay was written by Mark Swift and Damon Shannon. Now, I hadn't heard of these two names. They didn't immediately ring a bell. So I kind of had a little look, and let me give you a rundown of their previous writing work. They wrote Freddy vs. Jason, the Friday the 13th remake, and a Baywatch movie. Yeah. Now, this isn't the kind of filmography that really inspires confidence, doesn't it? But I think everyone deserves a second chance, and horror history is filled with writers who eventually made rubbish and brought something amazing to the table. Could this film be their redemption story? Interestingly, Raimi specifically wanted to work with her again after Doctor Strange, in which she played what he thought was a really underused part in that film. He thought audience would be surprised by watching her tackle a really dark and more morally questionable character than she's normally known for. And opposite her is Chris Pang. Now, to be honest, I've never heard of him whatsoever. But you know what? I was open for anything. So what is this movie all about? Well, I don't want to get into major spoilers, but here's the basic setup. We have Linda is a corporate employee who spent years and years being overlooked and ignored for that top role. And when she's passed over for promotion again in favour of her new friend, she's obviously really frustrated. Not long after that, she finds herself accompanying her new boss on a business trip. And then disaster strikes. The plane crashes, leaving Linda and Bradley stranded on a remote desert island in the middle of nowhere. At first, it seems like a kind of straightforward survival story, but things quickly become a lot more complicated. It turns out Linda becomes far more capable than anyone expected, while Bradley's confidence and authority utterly crumbles. And as this situation deteriorates, the power dynamic between these two constantly shifts. Now, what begins as a real survival thriller kind of transformed into more a psychological horror movie about control, manipulation, gender politics, office politics, resentment, and ambition. And by the end of it, survival isn't really a question anymore. It's really about what kind of person are you going to become when there's no one watching. So let's talk about what works. Now, I think where this film does shine, it's unmistakably Sam Raimi. The gore is fantastic. It's not just bloody, but it's really creative as well. Raimi absolutely understands horror violence and how shocking and funny it can be at the same time. And we get lots of those moments in this movie where you're kind of laughing and wincing, which is always fun. And I think that's a really difficult balance to pull off. The performances are also excellent. Rachel McAdams commits to the material wholeheartedly, and she really shines here. She takes a character who could have been really generic and does something interesting and compelling with her. You kind of understand her frustrations, you kind of sympathise with her, and the film kind of asks you if you should really be doing that. While Chris Pang is equally as strong, the movie relies heavily on the chemistry between its two leads because they're carrying the entire film effectively on their shoulders. And luckily, both actors are absolutely up to the challenge here. The dialogue is sharp, funny, the tension works, and the back and forth can be really playful and engaging throughout the runtime. Talking of runtime, I really like the pacing of this. Modern horror to me feels like it can go on forever and ever and ever. This was really nicely paced. You get a decent 90 odd minute story that's kind of stretched a little bit, but it works. I think the film kind of gets in, tells its story, and gets out again. There's no unnecessary subplots, no endless exposition. It's focused on story and it knows exactly what it wants to be. As I said, what the film is really about, it's about exploring hierarchy. We have cronyism, gender expectations, corporate culture, and the resentment when kind of people feel like they've been invisible for years. Now, none of these ideas are particularly groundbreaking, but they're handled really well here to give the film a little lift. That being said, there are things here that don't work. So let's get into the problems. Now, as much as I enjoyed this movie, I couldn't shake the feeling that I've seen all this before. The setup feels familiar. The character dynamics feels familiar. The direction of the story, you know where it's going to go and becomes utterly predictable. You can see most of where it's going to get to a mile off. So it isn't really about surprises, and I would like to have a few more of those, frankly. But my biggest issue here is the final act, and that's a criticism I've seen floating around online that kind of describes the last section of the movie as two awful people being awful to each other, and that's about it. And honestly, I think that's a real fair criticism. The first half really works because you're interested and invested in this changing dynamic. You're constantly wondering who's going to get the upper hand. But by the final stretch, however, both characters have become entirely unpleasant, and that's clearly intentional. But eventually, it kind of goes round and round in circles a little bit. Instead of building tension, it feels like it's just constantly repeating itself. It's not enough to ruin the film for me. I really enjoyed it, but it kind of stops it going to that level of greatness, which I was kind of hoping for. So at the end of the day, Send Help is a very good horror movie. It's funny, it's violent, it's well acted, it's tightly paced, and it's kind of classic Raimi, and it's got that energy that you really like with his movies. Is it one of his best? It really isn't. It's not even close. But it's certainly enjoyable. So I wouldn't call it a modern classic. I would absolutely recommend giving it a watch. For me, Send Help gets a solid 7 out of 10. It's fun, bloody, entertaining, but it falls short of greatness. If you've seen it, let me know what your thoughts are in the comments. Did you love it? Did you hate it? If you were stranded on a desert island with your boss, what would you do? Anyway, thanks for watching Homemade Horror Reviews, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care, everyone.